Neighbor was stealing water from my supply, so I made sure he'd regret it. ForeverI live in Asia, in the heart of a buzzing capital city, and recently got my hands on a house most would kill for cheap, central, and full of potential. The previous owners were family friends who'd moved abroad 3 years ago and needed fast cash. Lucky for me, that meant a bargain price and full ownership. The catch? The house had been left mid-renovation and looked like something out of a post-apocalyptic movie. The front door was secured with a cheap padlock instead of a proper lock. No gate, no security, just an open invitation for the neighborhood to use it as their personal hangout. The very first day I moved in, I discovered a stranger's motorcycle parked inside my garage like it was a public parking lot. No note, no apology, just arrogance. I didn't say a word, just wheeled it out onto the street and had a gate installed the same day. Later that evening, I heard furious knocking. From my window, I watched a frustrated man pacing and cursing for 15 minutes before finally giving up and riding away. Not a great first impression of my new neighbors. Things didn't improve much at first. People seemed confused by the fact that the house wasn't abandoned anymore. My gate kept getting blocked, but a simple no parking sign finally did the trick. I was settling in until one strange moment sparked a deeper issue. Last week, while taking a shower, I noticed the water pressure was weirdly low. Not a trickle, but definitely weaker. At that exact moment, I heard my next-door neighbor's water pump humming loudly. Now this man, a grumpy old mechanic turned landlord, lives on the ground floor of his 3-story house, renting out the upper floors to tenants. He wasn't pleased when my friends sold the house to me and made that very clear to them. But I'm a 6-foot guy with 3 large dogs. I wasn't worried about his attitude, or so I thought. The thing is, water pressure in our area isn't strong enough to reach rooftop tanks without a motor. When I heard his pump running and my pressure dropping, alarm bells started ringing. Out of curiosity, I waited until I heard his pump switch off and turned my taps again. Like magic, the pressure returned to normal. That's when the puzzle pieces started falling into place. Over the past 3 years, even though the house was supposedly unoccupied, the water bills were suspiciously high. Everyone thought it was just due to leaky pipes, but now I had a theory, a pretty damning one. I scoured my property for signs of tampering, but the exact siphoning point was cleverly hidden. Still, every test I ran confirmed that he was definitely stealing my water. He must have tapped into the plumbing when the house was still vacant and just assumed no one would notice. Entitled and sneaky. That really ticked me off. Let me be clear, water here is cheap. Even with my dogs, my car, and my garden, I only pay about $5 a month. But this wasn't about money. It was about principle. About the nerve of someone who thought they were entitled to take something that wasn't theirs, simply because they got away with it once. So I plotted. Instead of a confrontation or legal drama, I decided to go with something simple, subtle, and devastating. I waited for the right moment on a Monday evening when I heard his pump fire up again. I walked over and calmly turned off my water supply from the main valve. That was it. One flick of the wrist. Now, let me explain how things work here. In most households, rooftop water tanks use a ball valve to measure the water level. When the level drops, it triggers the pump. Once refilled, it shuts off. But with my valve turned off and no incoming water, the tank never refilled. So the pump kept running, and running, and running. What I didn't expect was how badly it would backfire on him. Turns out, this man had ancient 90s era wiring in his house, no modern safety mechanisms to shut things down when they overheat. By 3 a.m., his entire electrical system fried. I could hear the chaos from my bedroom window, confused voices, flickering flashlights, and finally, shouting. Apparently, the constant power draw from the pump had torched the fuses and taken out both water and electricity. Total blackout. In my country, water and power are classified as essential services. Landlords are legally responsible for maintaining both, and tenants are well protected. The next morning, I overheard even more yelling. One tenant moved out immediately. The other 2 lodged formal complaints with the police. That's when it really spiraled. Because the outage was due to poor wiring and failure to maintain essential utilities, the landlord, my lovely neighbor, got slapped with a hefty fine of $500. That's a huge amount here. And since both tenants left, he now had to return their security deposits and couldn't rent the place again until the wiring and water issues were resolved, which meant spending even more money. Money he didn't have. As of today, he's packing up and moving in with his daughter because he can no longer afford to live alone. The man is a retired mechanic with no income other than rent, and I just took that away without even touching him. Of course, he eventually figured it out. He came by, knocked on my gate, and politely asked if I had turned off my water. I looked him dead in the eye and said, "Oh yeah, I had a leak in the tank." Turned off the supply until the plumber could fix it the next day. The look on his face? Priceless. He didn't explode, didn't argue, just froze for a moment. I could see the gears turning in his head. He knew, but he also knew he couldn't prove anything. He muttered, "Okay," and walked back inside. Defeated. Next week, I've got a plumber coming to audit and seal every pipe that exits my property. I'm not leaving any room for another stunt like this again. So in the end, with one small twist of a valve, I burned out his pump, his power, his tenants, his savings, and his peace of mind. All without breaking a single law. One flick of a tap, and his little empire came crashing down. Two birds, one valve.